Hello, Paper from Paper&Geno, and today I want to tackle a part of Monster Hunter that I, and probably many others, have never really tackled before. Arena Quests. Arena Quests are designed to be the time-based challenge for hunters that provide a preset of weapons, armor, and items, so you can't prepare the best weapons or armor to take on the monster in the arena. The reason I think Arena Quests are not as popular is because you have to use presets, which are not yours to keep. Also, the rewards are a bit lackluster, but in Rise, we receive something special at the end. So, keep in touch. Now, how hard is it to get an S rank for all arena quests? Now, you may have seen some crazy actions from hunters all around the world, proving that each weapon can be shown to be deadly, with crazy times under 2 minutes. These hunters really display the power and finesse needed to use these weapons. They are good at reacting in time for monster attacks, and they are able to do some crazy stuff. But then there's me. I find myself to be an average player when it comes to Monster Hunter, and I have played the game since 3 Ultimate. I've never really done anything crazy with the game, like any major challenges, until only recently. I wanted to test myself and learn more about the game. During this time, I was told by another veteran player that Arena can really teach you a lot, and most players spend more time in the arena to improve basic weapon mechanics. So for an average hunter, I always ask, how hard is it to get an S rank? Now our first quest we are doing is a Kuliaku Hunt, and honestly I have history with this monster since in World you had to fight him first as your first bird wyvern, but also you had to fight him to unlock the Final Fantasy Behemoth quest, and I had trouble with him doing that quest solo. He would really crack my head open like an egg. Cause, you know, he eats eggs. Never mind. We don't have too much trouble with him since he is a basic bird wyvern in the last game, but currently I really want to work on my longsword skills, since I'm really bad with the longsword. Now my enemy isn't really going to be the issue, since it's just a Kuliaku, but it's going to be the time limit. With the longsword I tried multiple times since I knew I could beat him, but I was tackling this like the older Monster Hunter games. I was literally running around not using my Silkbind moves. Now learning this is easier said than done. With the longsword I attempted, and honestly I'm not a huge fan of the weapon since I'm not a longsword main. Well, after a few attempts, I already looked into what I got myself into, I decided to try out another weapon to see if I can do a lot more with this. Now here comes the Swax, the Switch Axe. Now in the Tackling HR2 No Armor Challenge video, I used the Swax a bit, and I know the moveset a lot more. I decided to use this weapon to take on Kuliaku, and now once again, all we have to really use is Silkbind moves, and honestly I actually enjoy the Silkbind moves for the Switch Axe a lot more. So with the Swax and the Silkbind moves, we were able to beat Kuliaku within the time limit. The first thought that came to my mind was a little bit daunting because I just realized this was the first arena quest and I already had a challenge getting this done. I was wondering how I'm going to be able to handle the rest of the arena quest coming up. Now in the past, after that hunt and how much work I had to put in just to get a simple S rank on the first arena quest, it would make me back off and go back to hunting regular monsters to get more gear. But currently I have completed what we have in the game so far. After a small break, I went ahead and tackled the next arena quest, which is against Baroth. I took the next arena quest differently since I did against Kula. Remember, it's not about being the best, but the best that we can be. Since the weapon of choice I decided to complete a run, I didn't really have a choice. I kinda just went through each one of them. First would be the Sword and Shield. And since the Sword and Shield is one of my favorite weapons, I really like this, because I actually have a lot of history since using the weapon since 3 Ultimate. But of course, the weapon has seen a lot of changes since then and has adjusted, but I've always picked it up each iteration, so we're going to go ahead and tackle the first quest with the Sword and Shield. Now, I get a decent time, but not enough to get an S rank with the Sword and Shield, so the next step we're going to use is the Hammer, and this weapon is actually very strong. I have not mained this weapon at all, but I always loved picking it up as an off pick in previous games. So I kinda do know what I need to do with a hammer. And I am starting to get better at time since I'm hunting the Barroth each time, and I'm starting to learn a little bit more of his moves and when his biggest openings are, so it's starting to get a little bit more manageable. So after the hammer, I do get a decent time, but I don't get an S rank, so I go ahead and tackle it with the next one. I do tackle Barroth with the sword and shield and hammer a couple times, just because I had a feeling that was those two were probably my best weapons to use, but it did get kind of daunted, so I ended up actually using the insect glaive. Now, my history with the insect glaive, I've used it in 4 Ultimate in its first iteration. I've used it in Generations Ultimate, which wasn't the best, but I did like using it because it's one of those weapons that you can use to fly around and actually have a lot of fun. Now, in World and Rise, I actually have not used the insect glaive at all, so all the combos was fairly new to me. I think the only time I actually used it was during the training room when I was doing my last video, and probably just tackling HR2, but that was pretty much about it. Now, this is where I kind of fall down a little bit mentally, just because I had a 7-minute hunt that, like, I needed 4 minutes for me to actually get a good time with Barroth, but I couldn't get there. I was going up, so my mind and mentally I wasn't really there. And like that, we switch over to the heavy bowgun. Now, the heavy bowgun's also another gun I haven't really used, not even in World, so it's one of those guns I kind of want to just pick up and see what I can do. After the amazing defeat that we had with that 7-minute run, I used the heavy bowgun, but to my surprise, I am not great with this weapon. I actually get an extra minute added on to my next hunt, which is over 8 minutes. So, well, with this in mind, I decided to use the lance to see what time I would get. Since now remembering it, I can only go up from here. And one major thing I actually really despise of the lance is actually the wire bug moves it comes in default. I feel like they could have done a lot better, but it's something that really kind of like brings the weapon down in my books, honestly. It doesn't really have the best wire bug moves default, but when you get that wire bug dash move, that's really fun to use because you can actually change directions and do certain crazy things, but you don't have that in this. You have the wire bug dash move, which I feel like is a very lackluster for how much it costs. But with this, we actually get a better time with 5 minutes and 53 seconds. Now, I'm excited again. I decide that either the sword and shield or hammer are going to be my best bet to get an S rank in the arena. My mentality is starting to get a little bit better and improving, but we'll see what happens afterwards because I know the lance did change up a lot of things, and I kind of want to tackle it with a weapon I didn't know. I deem myself better with the weapon. I actually use the sword and shield a lot over the hammer because, once again, it is a weapon that I do find very endearing. And, well, and one major thing we learned while using the lance, that silkbind moves are going to be your best friend. So we have to really work on our silkbind moves and perfect rush combo. These are only things I focus on when I attempt each hunt. Focusing on this actually does improve my time, and with the sword and shield I was able to get a time of 3 minutes and 45 seconds. Which I finally, with a sigh of relief, I can actually get an S rank with this weapon because we had to get under 4 minutes. So that was a good while. I believe that quest took me about a good 2 to 3 hours to complete. Now the next hunt, I looked into the sets for the Arena 3 quest, which I found funny since I noticed very late that it was in the Flooded Forest. I started off the hunt with the switch axe to fight the Royal Ludroth since I had really good luck using it on our first quest. But the switch axe, I noticed the hardest part of the challenge would actually be going from where Royal Ludroth is all the way to Nargacuga. That was our main issue, is how fast and how much time we're going to be saving. So by doing that, I start actually trying to wyvern ride my monsters over to where the other monster's at so I can deal some additional damage and also get some times it better. So I noticed that I actually wasn't really doing that great with the switch axe, so I actually switch it up and go to the bow. And now the bow, I actually have a lot of history with this weapon back in World. This was my main for both the low rank and high rank hunts. And this is actually one of my favorite weapons. The only problem is I am really bad at monitoring my stamina. But we end up taking on the Royal Ludroth first. The biggest thing about using the bow is actually it took me a couple hunts to really get into the groove of it again. But I was able to tackle the Royal Ludroth first and get a really decent time. and then we end up tackling Nargacuga. My biggest thing is actually I was really focusing on how fast we can take out Royal Ludroth without using any of our coatings, or even just use the sleep coating, because sleep coating is not that hard to use on the Royal Ludroth. And we're able to actually get a fairly decent time and then go straight to Nargacuga instead of Wyvern riding him over, because that does take a lot of time as well. So we ended up actually getting this all done. We save our coatings, we tackle Nargacuga with them, we paralyze him, we put him to sleep, we use our power coatings for extra damage, and without fear we ended up actually beating this barely, just by 2 seconds, to get an S rank. Now this one took me a few hunts. It actually took me probably a good 2 hours just to get this one to an S rank, just because it did take me some time to get used to the weapon choices, and I think that's the biggest strength of actually the arena quest, is just getting used to the weapons that you use. Now after this, one thing happens. I actually fall in love with the bow again. Honestly, I'm working on creating each bow right now as my second weapon to complete in the game. I already completed the dual blades, which is my current main. The new flare usage is very awesome. Like, the aerial aim is fun since it comes in handy when I'm in a bad spot, and you can just fire arrows from the sky itself and dodge some crazy moves. I've done that a lot. Now the next fight is the Barrier. Now this is our first tackle on the arena high rank quest. So when it comes to me beating the last 3 arena quests, it actually teaches me 3 big lessons. Arena 1 taught me using Silkbind moves and staying on the offensive. 2, making sure I choose the right weapon that guarantees my time improvement. 3, pushing accordingly to time and planning on the fly. Learning the monster's movements and making sure you understand big attacking tells. So, Barrieth was the first fight I was able to jump into pretty easily, and honestly was the first time I was able just to focus on my time for this fight. Now the bow was my new favorite weapon, and I decided to go after the Barrieth with a plan, using Silkbind moves to empower my attack like Herculean Draw. So by using this plan of attack, all that is left is just to encounter the monster as much as we can, learning how the Barrieth attacks, and we were able to beat the Barrieth with 5 seconds to spare on one of our hunts. So we're able to get our nice juicy S rank. Getting close to the finish line, gotta keep the mentality in great shape in this hunt. Oh god. Now Arena 5 is the Rajang. I have history with this monster since we go way back, even in 4 Ultimate, with his Apex version, which I am actually expecting Capcom to bring back to Rampage quests in the future. They're sadists. Now, this hunt is the final hunt. Using everything we learned from all the arena quests, I was able to very confidently enter this fight. Once again, Silkbind moves are going to be very important. Now, I used the dual blades in my first playthrough of the game since I love the flare of the weapon and I love the flying new moves it got. I was a big fan of the aerial dual blades in Generations Ultimate, so it was really nice to have this to come back. Once again, I'm not going to say my first hunt is going to be the hunt that actually tackles this and we get a really good time. But no, we still have to learn the Rajang's moves. He's very fast, he hits very hard. I've actually carded a few times in this quest. We start to actually get into optimizing his movements and my own movements, and we do less running around, which is my biggest issue with these higher hunts, is that the monster moves so much that you have to run towards them or get closer to them as quickly as possible. Now, the lesson we learned in Arena 1 is that we need Silkbind moves. So we ended up actually grabbing the 3rd Wire Bug, which I was ignoring up until this point and should have, but it does improve our Wire Bug use. Now, armed with this knowledge, I take on Rajang again and again and again, and even with this information, I still fail the quest and get bad times. Like, times are not that bad, but I kept trying, and 45 minutes passed, and finally I had one attempt go right. Now I zoned out this entire fight. This is the point where my brain was done. I just played the game. Honestly, the closest thing in my mind was I was in flow. I was in a state of flow. I had no major problems after fighting against the monster, and it was very thrilling when finished the final quest. So, in the end, I learned something new. Doing all the arena quests was very, very fun, and actually had a very big thrill of the hunt. It really did teach me to take on the challenge in a different way. I can complete the quests. Now, the one major reward doing this quest is actually gaining the mighty bow feather. So that's the big reason why I'm actually making all the bows, is because I have that now. Ironic that I did not know that this is how you get the mighty bow feather. And honestly, it was a great reward in my own opinion when I saw it. With that being said, this is Paper from Paper&Geno. Catch y'all hunters soon.